Justice League Dark, issue 20. So this is just you. Obviously, Matt's got some thoughts as well. So when you get to the end, buzz me in and I'll tell you what Matt thought.
Yeah, so this was actually an interesting one because obviously it's the first issue of the new writer. This is Ram V. We got Kyle Hotz on art as well, but intrigued to see where this was going, and it feels like a fairly reasonable departure from what we were dealing with. Not a lot of the other kind. They kind of briefly mentioned, but like it's kind of like, we'll get back to that. We actually start with Animal Man, and which who hasn't been in the book at all up till now. So that was obviously a new element. And then there's there's this guy going around. He's got like mushrooms growing out of his head, and it's weird. And people are kind of like, hey, aware that something's going on. And he's just going up this building. He's going up, going up the elevator. He's getting right to the top, and and people are looking up and think he's going to jump, and then his head explodes. And yeah, that was a hell of a moment. Basically, it's these. You might have even heard of them because I'm familiar with the thing in general. It's those fungus that like infect like ants and stuff like that, and they take over the brains, and they're kind of described as being zombies. You might have seen the odd article online about them. It's basically that, but this subspecies of the fungus can infect people. So it's infected. I think it's LA is where we are, and it's half the city is being infected, and this is how it spreads. So what it does is it infects them, and then it drives them to go towards the top of a building. Get as much height as you can, and then explode your head, and it will spread all its spores and go to more and more people, which is pretty intense. So Animal Man calls in the Justice League Dark. Lots of nice banter between him and Bobo, and Diana's there as well. And they're trying to kind of just stop them getting up these buildings and trying to figure out, okay, what's going to be the plan. And we do learn that Animal Man is a little bit infected himself. He seems to have some sort of resistance. Not sure exactly because he was in the crowd when the first head exploded. And he definitely has something growing out the back of his neck, but it is nowhere near as bad. But that's all actually really quite interesting stuff. It's an intriguing plot for this to kind of delve into, and I'm into it. The other half of the book, though, is the other characters dealing with the leftover Swamp Thing stuff, basically. Realizing that the Parliament are out of balance and they need to do something. So we've got Kelly talking to the Helmet of Fate in Naboo, doing having a bit of arguments about what they should do and how they should treat this. And they talk about how they need to convene the Parliament of Life, and it's kind of basically all the other forces, the red, the green, the rot, and division. I think it was the newer one that I always forget. Basically, they all have to come together, and they have to. All the avatars have to work together to perform this ritual that can then convene, like a joint parliament. Which they're like, this is going to be a bit of a problem because the current avatar of the green is Woodrue, who they've got locked up in a basement. So I guess this takes place after Harley and Ivy or before, who knows. But they've got him locked up in the basement, and he's not too happy and doesn't really want to work with them. But basically, Constantine goes back in to see him after, and is like, "Hey, you go along with this, and I'll get you out. I'll sort it out for you." And he doesn't really believe him. He's like, "Well, sure, why not? We'll go with it." But then there is an entity that comes. It starts as like a little fly, and it kind of melts. And it's got a wonderful lettering effect. It's all these, it's black bubbles with white text, and they said Constantine's going to betray you, but our arrangement holds true. And soon, I'll be, you'll be free, and I'll have my revenge. And it's interesting because I'm assuming if I didn't know better, I would have assumed this was an avatar of the Rot. But we're reminded multiple times in this that Abby Arcane is there and is the avatar of the Rot, and they're off to find her. That's where Zatanna goes, and after they try to hunt Floronic Man. So I'm not entirely sure who this is. So I'm kind of interested. Maybe Matt knows. I don't know. The art is all right. It's definitely a very different tone to what we had before. We had it was lots of muted but brightish colors that we had for the last handful of issues, or most of the book has been pretty consistent. This is a lot scratchier, a lot more shadows. Reminds me more of like something straight out of the 90s. Not necessarily in a bad way. Like, I really like that Constantine's a lot of like panels of him like smoking with half his face in shadow and just like the smoke kind of flowing around his face that works really well. But I don't think it works as well for the action, unfortunately, and some of the smaller expressions. But it's pretty decent as a start. I'm intrigued to see where it goes.
Okay.
What's Matt saying?
Matt is saying, not much to say, but I enjoy that they're using the Parliament's Soul Help setup in his swampy run. I don't get why people like Constantine so much, looking at you, Connor. That fungus is a real thing and pretty gnarly. Art was spotty, but the grotesque stuff really pops. I miss Man Bat. And he gives it a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to disagree with anything he said there. Kind of echoes a lot of my thoughts. But I agree with the 7 out of 10 as well.